Hello and welcome to our session today here in Portugal, and we're delighted that you're with us today. Thank you for joining us. So today we're here to talk about Brexit and what changes are coming after the 1st of January 2021 for those considering buying or investing in a holiday home or a holiday house in Portugal. And today I'm joined by Tanya Castro, who's the Managing Director of TPMC. TPMC International Management Solutions. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So today we're going to talk about what changes are coming from the 1st of January 2021 for those thinking about moving to Portugal and buying a home or a house there. We can also take questions from our audience, and please feel free to put your questions into the box on the right-hand side of your screen. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Christina Hipsley, and I'm the General Manager of the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce here in the UK. Now, we're partners today with the In Portugal show, since we in the UK also do live shows and events in the UK for the British that want to buy property or move to Portugal. Now, our next big live event, I hope, will be in London in April 2021. So if you're in the UK, come and see us then. We also do regular online events with our chamber members, and our chamber members are all sorts of companies, from lawyers, tax managers, wealth advisors, property search agents, and the biggest real estate resorts and real estate agents in Portugal. We've got all sorts of companies in the chamber, and they can answer any question you might have. So just let us know. Have a look at our dedicated website, movingtoportugal.org.uk. See us on Facebook, or just talk to us here at the show. Now, what changes are going to be coming after 1st of January 2021 for those of us considering moving, investing, or buying a holiday home? So basically, now you know who I am, I'd like to introduce our guest for today, who is Tanya Castro from TPMC. Now, Tanya is also a corporate member of the Chamber. Thank you, Tanya. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule. So today I'm going to ask Tanya some questions, and we're going to take questions from you, our viewers. So put some questions in the box. And Tanya, firstly, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you live in Portugal, what company you work for, TPMC. Tell us a bit about it and what you do for a living.
Hi, hello, Christina. First of all, thank you so much for having me. So, I'm Tanya Castro, as you already said. I work for the past 15 years in TPMC. We are a management company. So what does it mean? It means that in a very simple way, we help foreign residents and investors to understand and to in Portugal, fulfill all formalities needed and bureaucracy, if I may say bureaucracy, in Portugal. So we help foreigners to do that within Portugal, and then we help Portuguese to do that abroad. At the end, we have a legal, an accounting, a fiscal, a human resources, and an administrative sector that helps with several colleagues, that helps with the daily matters that the people and the entrepreneurs and the companies, they need to comply with. We know that Portugal is like, and I suppose UK also, we are very bureaucratic when in terms of formalities. So our assistance is in a way that everything is more efficient and not complex. So if we can make a process simple and efficient, we have fulfilled our work.
So Tanya, just to recap, I've been lucky enough to visit your office, and I know that you have a team of people working with you in there.
Yeah.
So as you say, TPMC's main role is to help investors, whether they're private investors buying property or moving their lives to Portugal, or businesses moving their lives to Portugal, or moving their staff, or moving their office systems, or moving their head of their HQs over to Portugal. Basically, a company like TPMC can make sure that that company or individual does everything right, plans the tax correctly, sorts out the payroll, gets good
Does
value
the
for money,
accounting,
does the
exactly.
accounting, sorts out the electricity, whatever it might be, all that kind of, well, not necessarily the electricity, but you've got people that, to do that. So, and just to recap, obviously your services cover the whole of Portugal, and you've got lots of clients within mainland Portugal, but you're lucky enough to live in Madeira, aren't you? Just off the coast of Portugal.
I'm very lucky because I live and work in Madeira. So the office is physically in Madeira now. And even though Portugal has a lot of bureaucracy, we do have a very efficient online service for almost almost public aspects. So even though I live in Madeira and the office is in Madeira and all the teams are situated in Madeira, we do have backup offices in Lisbon and Oporto that help us with the physical measures and files we have to comply with if online system is not an option. But we manage to deal with everything through Madeira's office 99% of the time. So the system, fiscally speaking, and also fiscal authorities, social security, banking system, everything in Portugal is done in a way that, like,
it doesn't matter where you are.
Exactly.
Yes. It's true that Portugal is extremely, far ahead of the UK in many ways, much faster broadband. And it's gone from the 19th to 21st century in many ways in terms of the way that the bureaucracy is all now handled online. Companies are formed within a few hours, etc. So
exactly. So allow me just to tell you something that I think it's very interesting for you, for the British. So 100% of the public sites, they are already, or it's possible to read them in English. So it's really, really well done for any foreign people or residents in UK that want to replace themselves or even find out more about our country.
Very well positioned, exactly. So Tanya, we'll come to a few specific questions in a moment. Back to the issue that you and I are going to be discussing for the next few minutes, the changes coming after the 1st of January 2021 for those considering investing in Portugal. Now, we both know that Portugal already offers a very healthy lifestyle, obvious reasons, the sunshine, the fresh air, space, the more relaxed way of life in the cities of Lisbon and Porto, but also outside the main cities. Portugal, as we know, has 10 million people. Over 500,000 foreign residents already resident officially in Portugal. Over 35,000 of those are British people who've registered and are inside the Portuguese official system. But there are many thousands more. Tanya and I think probably a total of around 60,000 Brits living and spending most of their time in Portugal. Now, the Brits are the single biggest group of foreign residents in Portugal, and they're also the single biggest group of foreign property buyers in Portugal, just ahead of the French. But in Madeira, by coincidence, it's the Germans that buy most property, followed by the British. So it's slightly different depending where you go in Portugal. Now, just for context, in case it's relevant, because Tanya does live in Madeira, although her expertise covers the whole of the country. Madeira is an hour's flying time from Lisbon. It's about 2.5 hours flight from London. 250,000 inhabitants, lots of German and British residents there as well. Now, we're noticing in the chamber lots of British people looking to move permanently to Portugal because of Brexit, and also this move that we're calling work from Portugal, which is basically people who want to work from home and work remotely now. And it's perfectly possible, as this pandemic has proved to us. So, Tanya, I'd like to ask you some questions. We're getting some good questions in from the audience as well, which is why I'm just checking on the side here. For technical reasons, I have to check the questions on another platform. Tanya, let's start with the basics. What are the current rules in residency and tax now when a British citizen wants to move to Portugal or buy a house there? And obviously, will those rules change dramatically on the 31st of December this year?
So until 31st of December 2020, so we still have some time. If you are a resident in Portugal before the end of the transition, before the end of the withdrawal agreement that you can arrange with the EU, you will be able to stay. So you will be able to maintain all the conditions you have and that the British had being EU citizens. So what do you have to do? You must register yourself as a resident in Portugal if you want to stay in Portugal for more than 3 months. To get this registration certificate, and it's called a EU certificate of residency, you have to go to your own local city hall. So where do you find your own local city hall? Is where your real estate or your fixed address is situated. If you have a rental agreement, if you have a real estate acquired, you will check where you have your city hall and you go there and you ask your registration certificate. What you need to do, you need to bring with you a proof of address, usually or the public deeds and registry of the acquisition of the real estate, or a copy of the rental agreement. In Portugal, all the rental agreements have to be registered online in the site of the fiscal authorities also, so they are able to check if the rental agreement is valid or not. It's a way for them also to assess the residency of the person. So you bring your proof of address, you bring a copy of your passport, of course, or your passport, and then you ask your EU certificate of residency. If that's done within the 31st of December 2020, you will be able to stay and keep all your rights acquired until that date. One of them is that after 5 years of residency in Portugal, you can apply for a permanent residency certificate. Okay, also known as a residency card.
Exactly. So just to recap, anybody who's watching this now who already owns property in Portugal but doesn't live there, i.e. you spend a big chunk of your year in the UK, let's say, but you're keen to regularize your position before the end of this year, you need to get over to Portugal. You probably have done this already. You need to get over to Portugal, go to your house, because obviously you'll already have a Portuguese bank account and a Portuguese fiscal number because you've bought a house, but you must get down to your local Câmara, your local town hall, and get your residency permit signed and authorized before the 31st of December, because that way you will appear on the official British registration lists for the Portuguese, and you will be subject to all the normal lifestyle and fiscal benefits that are in place right now in Portugal. After the 1st of January next year, the story will change slightly, which we'll talk about. So
I have to tell you, Christina, and sorry to interrupt you, but I've been meeting with the foreign offices, and I did a meeting last week, and even the foreign services and the city hall services are spreading the word. So we are asking for the British who have interests in Portugal and want to ask the residency certificate to do it, please, and to insert themselves now, because after that things will change, and it will be impossible to keep the rights that they have acquired within the scope of the withdrawal agreement that UK did with the EU.
And the British Embassy in Portugal is running a big campaign, along with the Portuguese border authorities, to try and get all the Brits currently resident in Portugal, or those who have the right to reside in Portugal because they have a house or whatever, to register themselves now before the 31st of December. Now, several people, Tanya, that we've met through our Moving to Portugal seminars have already managed to rent a property in Portugal, because you have to demonstrate that you've been living in Portugal for at least 3 months, don't you?
Exactly.
In order to get your residency certificate at the town hall. Now, the way that you can rent the property is it has to be a reasonably long rental contract, presumably a minimum of a year, Tanya, is it? For a rental contract. So you don't have to buy a house, you can rent a house, but it should be a proper long-term rental contract of at least a year. Now, we have a question here from Helen, Helen Juggernaut, who's been to some of our seminars before. Hello, Helen. Hi. We've got a question for you, Tanya. can you rent part of a house and still apply for residency? So let's say you're renting an apartment inside a house or the bottom half of a house, a fraction of a house. Um, does that still count? Because it's presumably a unit that's destined for long-term rental. So does that count for getting your residencia?
Yes, it counts. As long as you formalize the rental and as long as you have a document confirming that you have the right to that address, and that at the end, that's the important thing. So the public services, they want you to confirm that you have a fixed address and that you are able to comply with the residency, a fixed address confirmation for the EU certificate. So they know where you are living in case they need to communicate with you, in case they need to send you any kind of information in written. So that's one of the obligations of the citizens residing in Portugal. Okay.
Right. Okay. Right. Let's turn to what happens in January next year. Now, I know that here in the UK, everybody's on tenterhooks waiting for the outcome of the Brexit negotiations. What happens to people who want to buy a property in Portugal or move to Portugal after the 1st of January next year will slightly depend on whether there's a Brexit deal or not. If there's a no deal, then the UK's position with regard to the rest of Europe will be one thing in terms of buying property in Portugal. If there is a deal between the UK and Portugal in terms of Brexit, then there'll be another set of rules, I think, that will apply in Portugal. So, Tanya, let's assume there'll be a Brexit deal, that somehow our British government will sort stuff out. Tell us then, let's say you've got a typical client who's talking about coming to live in Portugal early part of next year because they can't organize themselves because of various problems this year. Let's say they're coming to moving over to Portugal next year and they haven't bought the house yet. But what are you telling them will happen, if anything, or is it difficult at the moment? We're just literally waiting.
Well, I have to tell you that according with the Foreign Services and the Ministry of Foreign Services, there are still things that are not well defined. So it means that it really depends on the will of the countries and also of the intentions of each country. As you know, Portugal has a long history and a long cooperation, cultural. If we're talking about all aspects of cultural, about immigrancy also, a lot of immigrants from Portugal to UK. We have a very we call a relation of sympathy with UK, and also businesses. The first country that with which Portugal exports is Spain because it's nearby Portugal, but the second one is UK. So we have a lot of economic and social interests in maintaining the good relations with UK. But the guidelines about the information that already exists is that from the 1st of January 2021, you will be able, and the Brits will be able to travel to over Schengen area countries for up to 90 days in any 180-day period without a visa, okay?
So any 90 days, within 180 days, right.
Exactly. So this is the general information for all the Schengen area. To stay longer, to work or study or for business, you will need to meet the entry requirements set off by each country. So you may need a visa in Portugal if everything is expected, and if everything stays as it is, you will need a visa to enter in Portugal if you're going to stay for more than 90 days.
Right,
if you want to work or study or do a business travel, that will take more than 90 days.
Okay, we've got a question here from Paul. Hello, Paul. Thank you for the question. Paul's question is, how can I secure residency and remain in the EU with no Portuguese address as yet? Do you offer any help in low-cost residences that can help secure residency and NHR as Brexit transition period ends? So, Paul, as you may have heard earlier, you have to have a Portuguese address in Portugal right now, which is via a rental contract, in order to go and get your residency certificate at the local town hall in Portugal. And you have to have probably lived in that rental, whether it's a low cost rental or whatever, for 3 months before you go to the town hall and register. So 6 months ago that was possible because you still had enough time. But right now Paul would have run out of time, wouldn't he?
Yeah, probably because we are almost at the end of the year, and it's two months and 1 week until the end of the month, until the end of the year. Sorry, so I don't think it's possible in a feasible way for you to get a rental agreement with more than 3 months.
No. Yeah. So let's turn to what most of us will now be thinking about, which is we've left it too late this year. But we definitely want to move to Portugal next year. We're sick of Brexit. We're fed up with the UK. We want to go live in a nice warm place and either run our businesses from Portugal or just spend 9 months of the year there and be tax resident and just have a better lifestyle. So, Tanya, what happens then? Let's say it's me or any of your typical clients. Let's say I want to move to Portugal on the 1st of April next year. What will I need to do then?
Well, it really depends on your purpose, because Portugal has a lot of good options in terms of visa. If you're coming to Portugal and you're going to stay to live or to work or to do business, you need to define the kind of visa you want. At this moment, for example, I can tell you that we have very, very interesting visa like the entrepreneur visa, where if you are somebody that wants to create a business, incorporate a company, or even be your own boss, like an independent or high technical skill activity, you can, through a visa, also do it. It's interesting because you can do this from Portugal with the Foreign Office's services, but you can also do it through the Portuguese embassy in London. It's not a complex file. So at the end, what you need to demonstrate that you are able to support yourself, okay? That you are able to have a fixed residency also, and that you want to work in and describe your activity in Portugal. Okay, there are other visas that require investment, like the golden visa, the famous golden visa, but Portugal has created a lot of interesting choices for common labor people like yourself and myself, and people that in fact are still in an age that they need to produce and work in several areas.
Sorry, Carol, forgive me. Sorry, you were just going to finish. Oh, sorry.
Just to tell you that the most common for non-EU that we are dealing with now are, besides the golden visa, of course, but that do not require this kind of investment, the big amount of investment, is the entrepreneur visa, usually used for people, high-skilled and technical skilled people that come to live and work from Portugal, because you can work worldwide from Portugal. You can travel, you can visit all your clients, so it's fairly easy. We are very well located, geographically speaking, between the continents, so the African one, the American one, and the European. So they use a lot the entrepreneur visa, and they use a lot the common labor visa, but also Portugal has in place a high-skilled professional visa for people that have high-skilled qualities of labor. Okay.
So if, as a British resident, I decide I want to go and live in Portugal next year and give up my tax residency in the UK and become tax resident in Portugal, and I own a business and I pay myself a salary of whatever it is, £100,000 or whatever, which I can run my business from Portugal. I then become tax resident in Portugal as a British
Yeah.
citizen. Will I be eligible for what's called the non-habitual tax regime, where I pay a lower amount of money, a lower amount of tax on my income?
Yes, you will. What do you need to do? You need to do the process to change the fiscal residency to Portugal. It's very important that once you do that in Portugal and in all the Portuguese public records, that you close your fiscal record in UK. Okay, because there are a lot of people that do everything right in Portugal, but then forget or think it's not important to close the record in UK. And why? Because for the non-habitual purpose, and even for the use of the treaty that Portugal has with UK, the double tax treaty, to avoid being taxed in both countries. Because if you leave your record in UK open, UK can tax you also. Okay? So you can. The rules for the non-habitual are very simple and straightforward. So you need to become a fiscal resident in Portugal now. So you have a deadline until March of the next year to apply. Everything can be done online. It's fairly easy. They will assess your requirements annually within the sending of your annual tax return. And the basic rules are you cannot have any kind of criminal or fiscal bad record. You can't be living in Portugal for the past 5 years prior to that change, and you can't have any kind of income originated in Portugal for the past 5 years prior to your residency. Okay, it's very interesting because you can have access to a fixed rate, a personal fixed rate of 20% on all your Portuguese income, and also arrive to a zero taxation on your UK income, as long as you have done the non-habitual resident. For retired people, and we do have a lot of people interested in spending the retirement in Portugal, we now have a 10% taxation on all the income related to retirement. Okay?
So that would be exactly the same. If I was wanting to retire to Portugal next year, buy a house or whatever, and simply go and retire to Portugal, give up my residency in the UK and retire to Portugal, even though the UK is not in the EU anymore, as a British citizen, I have the right, I can apply to go and live in Portugal and get the correct visas and apply for the non-habitual tax regime and pay 10% on my pension income in Portugal under the non-habitual tax regime.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. We have 5 minutes left. I have a question again from Paul. Actually, it's about the issue of registering. So Paul is saying he has registered as a Portuguese citizen, but he now needs a temporary address because he needs to find a property longer term when the travel restrictions are lifted. Oh, I see. So he doesn't actually have an address. So he's asking, do companies provide, or is there a sort of mechanism where somebody will give him a temporary address because of the pandemic, because he has to get to Portugal to go and then buy a property? So he's already got the residency.
Yeah, I have to tell you that if he has already the residency, and to assess that, I would need to check the document, but you have my contact details, so I'm available. Because of COVID, Portugal has given an extension on the timeline. So if she has a residency document or certificate or even term, she's able to extend the deadline until 31st of March 2021. So it means that she does not need to be in a hurry now, because due to COVID, a lot of physical restrictions between countries. So we have until 31st of March to define the strategy for that specific case. All the residency cards, ID cards, passports, everything related to ID and certificates, they were extended until 31st of March 2021.
So a bit of breathing space.
Yeah.
Okay. we have one other question, another question from our audience. How long does it take, Tanya, to register a rental contract? So let's say you've got the rental contract from your landlord.
Mm-hmm.
You then register it with the authorities.
Yeah, so it's made online and it takes 2 minutes.
Oh, oh I wasn't expecting that answer, but it has to be registered. Okay, fair enough. Right. Those are the main questions we're picking up here. Right. So I've got one last question for you, Tanya, because we are approaching the end of our time. But as you can hear, Tanya is a fount of information. She has an answer for everything. She spends all day doing this. I was going to ask you for a case study of one of your recent clients who went to live in Portugal. But on the other hand, anybody who's moving from now on is not going to be subject to the same thing. So it's probably better to talk about hypothetical issues. We'll give you one last question then, Tanya, before we finish today's seminar. What other practical things will we notice as British people now living in Portugal or moving, or I should say moving or traveling to Portugal from the 1st of January 2021? You need a visa if you're staying over 90 days. A small thing, well, a thing that will actually affect quite a lot of us is roaming charges on the mobile phones, because I think that's going to change quite a lot. We won't be part of this cheap European mobile roaming package.
And another interesting thing is your European health cards. I don't know if you noticed that, but that will change for people after the 1st of January 2021. And that's very important in terms of health, not only because of COVID, because that's something that fortunately will pass, but in the future you need to have access to a public health system, and if you have the European health card, that's a big advantage. So that's one of the things that will also change, is the simple access that you have until 31st of December. And for those who are registered, they will keep on having it. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah.
But the British won't, because at the moment, any British person, we're inside Europe, you can go and get here in the UK an EHIC card, the European Health Card. And if you present that in Portugal, if you're traveling there or you're staying there or you're there for 9 months or whatever, you get the equivalent treatment in the Portuguese National Health System as you would do in the UK, British National Health System. But of course, that won't apply after the 1st of January. 2021. So let's say I'm in Portugal for 6 months next year, but I'm not tax resident. I'm working there for 6 months remotely as a digital nomad. I won't have the right to go to Portuguese hospital, will I, as a British person? So what will I do?
You will, for the visa purpose and for work, if you're getting a visa for work, you will need to have a private insurance for sure.
Okay. So these are some of the practical realities of Brexit, which will be happening from the 1st of January 2021. And on that note, I'm sure there's lots more we could talk about with Tanya, but don't worry, we'll be bringing her back for more seminars on the Portuguese Chamber system under the movingtoportugal.org.uk site. So stay tuned. And I want to thank Tanya very, very much indeed for her help and information today. If anybody wants to talk to Tanya, what's your email, Tanya?
Well, my email is T from Tanya Castro, so CASTRO at tpmc.pt.
Okay. So anybody who's missed that, just contact the Chamber, info@portuguese-chamber.org.uk, and we'll give you Tanya's details. But thank you so much, Tanya. It just remains for me to thank you and to thank In Portugal for today's session. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.